Many people believe that going no contact is the ultimate way to make a woman miss you. The idea is simple. If you suddenly disappear from her life, she'll realize what she lost and come running back. But that belief, though widespread, is rooted in misunderstanding the deeper layers of human nature. Because true absence isn't about vanishing from her sight. It's about rising so steadily within yourself that your presence is no longer dependent on her recognition. Disappearing with the hope that she'll miss you is not strength, it's performance. It's silence wrapped in desperation, masked as power. And whether she admits it or not, she can feel the difference. Women are intuitive. They know when a man is waiting in the shadows, hoping his absence speaks louder than his presence ever did. But absence without purpose fades. She doesn't miss the man who disappears. She forgets him. She misses the man who stops giving his energy away like it was owed to her. The man who grows so profoundly in her absence that she no longer recognizes the one she let go. You don't need to vanish to prove your worth. You just need to stop offering it to people who haven't earned it. You don't go silent to make her chase. You grow so deeply, so consistently, that your evolution becomes impossible to ignore. Because at the heart of it, this journey isn't about winning someone back. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were too willing to disappear just to be loved. Subscribe to Stoic Station for more on masculine power, emotional control, and self-mastery. Your transformation starts now. And that begins with the very first step. 1. Don't react, take control. If you're done performing strength and ready to embody it, if you're ready to stop reacting and start rising, then this is your path. Subscribe to Stoic Station and begin the journey of becoming a man whose silence isn't a tactic, but a testament. The kind of man who doesn't disappear to be missed, but evolves so deeply he's never forgotten. There's a moment, right after she pulls away, says something cold or goes silent, where everything in you wants to respond. Your chest tightens, your mind races. You feel the urge to reach out, defend yourself, or demand clarity. But that exact moment is where most men lose their power. Emotional reactivity is the silent thief of masculine strength. It's not loud. It doesn't show up as a dramatic breakdown. It shows up in the subtle ways you give away your control when her behavior starts dictating your mood, your confidence, your sense of self. You feel high when she's warm and low when she's distant. That's not love. That's dependency disguised as connection. The truth is, most women have been conditioned to expect this from men. They expect that when they pull back, you'll lean in, that you'll get anxious, that you'll chase, that you'll try to restore the balance by proving your worth. And to be fair, that's what many men do. They react. They try to fix. They give away their center to try and regain her attention. But you are not most men. Power begins in stillness. The moment you pause, breathe, and refuse to be pulled into emotional chaos, something shifts. You show yourself and her that your inner world is not for sale. You demonstrate that you are not a puppet moved by her silence, nor are you desperate for her validation. You become an anchor, unmoved, calm, present. And that's when the attraction begins to grow again. Not through words, not through arguments, but through the unspoken message that you are in control. She feels the energy shift. She begins to question what she once assumed, that you'd always react, always chase, always be emotionally available. Now she feels something unfamiliar, uncertainty, and in that space she starts to lean in. If you want to train this muscle, don't suppress your thoughts. Channel them. Instead of reacting to her, take a moment to journal what you're feeling. Writing allows you to process without performing. It teaches you to respond with awareness, not impulse. In a world full of noise, emotional clarity becomes the new seduction. When you don't react, You're not avoiding conflict, you're choosing command. You're not withholding, you're mastering. And in doing so, you stop being someone she can provoke and become someone she cannot forget. 2. Not no contact, but genuine growth. No contact, when done out of pain, isn't strength. It's stagnation dressed as strategy. Let's be honest. Many men go silent not because they've healed or moved on, but because they're silently hoping she'll come back. They disappear, but their energy is still tethered to her. They're not building, they're waiting. And women, especially emotionally intelligent women, can feel it. They know when your silence isn't peace, but pain. They know when you're pretending to be okay just long enough for them to notice your absence. And that's why it doesn't work. Because absence without growth is forgettable, but absence born from transformation is unforgettable. There's a difference between going silent and going deeper into yourself. One is passive, the other is powerful. You don't disappear to make her wonder. You evolve to the point where your new presence makes her question everything she thought she knew about you. And that evolution cannot be faked. The man who truly walks away isn't disappearing into darkness. He's stepping into a brighter, more demanding version of himself. He's not waiting by the phone. He's not watching her stories. He's too busy building something real, whether it's getting in shape, mastering a craft, growing a business, or simply reclaiming his mental clarity. His energy shifts from obsession to progression, and that shift is magnetic. Growth is louder than any words you could send. She might not see you, she might not hear from you, but she'll feel the shift. The way your energy changes when you stop needing her approval and start chasing your own potential. The way your focus moves from her timeline to your purpose. That kind of silence doesn't echo, it roars. And here's what most men don't realize. When a woman senses you're still doing no contact just to make her miss you, it actually pushes her further away. It affirms that you're still emotionally tied to her, still hoping, still stuck. But when she begins to feel the disconnection, not just physically but emotionally, she starts to feel the void. Not because you're gone, but because you've changed. And not for her, but for you. Let that be your standard. Let your progress become your presence. Start something that intimidates you, something that forces you to confront your limits. Maybe it's that fitness goal you've been putting off. Maybe it's finally launching that business idea you keep dreaming about. Maybe it's waking up every morning at 5 a.m. to reclaim your day, not because anyone's watching, but because you've decided you're worth showing up for. Do it not to prove anything to her, but to prove something to yourself, that you are not defined by who walked away. The truth is, most people don't grow until they're forced to, until they lose something or someone that made them feel safe. But if you can take that loss and use it as fuel instead of falling into self-pity, you become unstoppable. She may have known the man you were, but she's never met the man you're becoming. And that man doesn't beg. He doesn't chase. He doesn't play games. He builds. He evolves. He transcends. So don't go no contact hoping she'll come back. Go silent because you're too invested in becoming someone you never want to lose again. Let your journey speak for you. Let your transformation do what no text, no message, no closure ever could. Because when a woman sees that you're no longer waiting, but growing, she doesn't just notice the distance, she feels the depth of your change. And that kind of energy isn't just attractive, it's unforgettable. 3. Controlled indifference is not coldness, it's stability. There's a quiet power in being unaffected, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped letting that care control you. That's what controlled indifference really is. It's not apathy, and it's certainly not cruelty. It's the product of deep emotional maturity, the kind you only develop when you've loved, lost, and finally learned how to hold yourself together when everything inside you wants to fall apart. Most people mistake controlled indifference for being cold or heartless. But that's not what this is. It's not about pretending you don't feel anything. It's not a mask you wear to protect yourself or a tactic to provoke a reaction. Controlled indifference means you can still feel everything, but you're no longer ruled by those feelings. You can care deeply for someone and still not crumble when they walk away. You can love someone and still choose yourself. When she pulls away, it's natural to want to fix it, to close the distance, to reach out and reattach to what feels safe. But controlled indifference invites you to do something radically different. Stay still, stay rooted, don't chase her, don't vanish, don't swing between emotional extremes trying to make a statement. Simply stay consistent, stay loyal to your peace, your purpose, and your growth. That's not passive, that's powerful, because what makes you magnetic isn't how much you give of yourself or how fast you run toward her when she steps back. It's your balance, your ability to stay steady, to remain centered, to not let her distance become your downfall. You're not avoiding her, you're prioritizing you. And that's a perspective shift most men never make. Controlled indifference is the moment you realize that her absence does not have to become your identity, that you don't need to burn bridges or close your heart to remain grounded. It's the recognition that detachment isn't a lack of love, it's the presence of strength. And that strength says, I can let you go without losing myself. You still feel, you still remember, you still carry the memories, but you lead with strength, not need. You're no longer the man who needs her to validate his worth. You've reclaimed that from within. You've built a life where your happiness is no longer dependent on her attention, her affection, or her approval. And she'll feel that. She may not say it, but she'll notice the shift. Because when you stop needing her energy to stabilize yours, she starts questioning where your emotional center truly lies. That's when curiosity replaces certainty. That's when she starts to lean in. The next time she pulls away, resist the urge to react. Don't explode with emotion. Don't fall into silence just to punish her. Don't try to make her feel what you're feeling. Just keep showing up for your work, your health, your purpose, your peace. Let her see that while you may love her, your world doesn't collapse in her absence. Let her witness the man who doesn't flinch under emotional pressure. That kind of emotional steadiness is rare, and rare things are always attractive. Controlled indifference isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It's learning how to keep your heart open without letting it be shattered by someone else's uncertainty. It's walking forward not with bitterness, but with clarity. It's showing up for your life even when your heart feels heavy. It's choosing progress over performance, presence over pretense. You don't have to become cold to protect yourself. You don't have to pretend you don't care to keep your dignity. You just have to remember that your emotional balance is yours to protect. You have the right to feel everything and the strength to respond to nothing. This isn't about winning her back. It's about never losing yourself again. When she sees that you can remain composed in the face of emotional chaos, she'll start to feel something she didn't expect. Admiration. Not for what you're doing to get her back, but for who you've become while letting her go. That's the power of controlled indifference. Not a weapon, a foundation, not a game, a standard, not a shield, but a calm, unshakable center in a world that always wants you to break. 4. Purposeful presence is more powerful than strategic absence. There's a common belief among men that disappearing will create desire, that silence, distance, and the absence of communication will trigger longing. But disappearing without purpose is not power. It's a gamble, and one that often backfires. Because when your silence is used as a strategy rather than a reflection of your self-possession, it feels hollow, it lacks depth, and worse, it reveals that you're still playing the game on her terms. The truth is, a woman doesn't truly miss you because you vanished. She misses you when she realizes that your world no longer revolves around hers. She feels the shift when your energy detaches, not in bitterness or revenge, but in quiet conviction, because your focus has turned towards something greater, something that doesn't include her at its center. And that shift, that withdrawal of emotional orbit, creates a gravity all its own. Purposeful presence is not about being visible to her, it's about being fully present in your own life. It's the man who is immersed in his mission, unapologetic about his path, and energized by his growth who becomes impossible to ignore. He doesn't use absence to provoke a reaction. He uses purpose to create momentum, and that momentum is felt even in silence. Disappearing for the sake of being missed keeps you trapped in a loop of external validation. It says, "I'm still waiting for your attention." But living with purpose says something entirely different. I have things to build, mountains to climb, and a future that demands all of me. When a man begins to show up for his goals with consistency and fire, when he reignites the ambitions he once put on hold, he stops being the man she used to know. And in that transformation, she begins to wonder, not because he vanished, but because he evolved. Take inventory of your life. What dreams have you silenced? What passions have you abandoned in the name of comfort or distraction? What part of yourself did you bury when your world revolved around hers? It's time to wake those parts up. Not to send a message to her, but to restore the message you once sent to yourself. That your life has meaning, with or without anyone's approval. This is where presence becomes power, not the kind of presence that waits by the phone or watches from afar, but the presence of a man who walks into every room with direction, who shows up for the gym, for his craft, for his mind, for his brothers, for his vision. The kind of man who doesn't need to announce he's doing well, because you can feel it when he walks in. His silence isn't void, it's full of energy, progress, momentum, and purpose. That's what she truly misses. Not just your company, but your emotional weight. The steadiness you used to give so freely. The version of you who was once so available, so predictable, now feels different. Grounded, focused, absent in body perhaps, but overwhelming in impact. She no longer sees you orbiting her emotional state. She sees you orbiting your own greatness. So don't vanish to make her wonder. Don't fall off the radar hoping she'll chase. Show up instead, for your own life. Show up so powerfully that the world, including her, takes notice. Not because you wanted to be seen, but because you couldn't stay small anymore. Let your passion, not your silence, be the loudest thing she hears. 5. Predictability kills desire. There's a quiet tragedy in being too available. A man who is always the first to text, the first to apologize, the one who consistently shows up even when his presence is taken for granted, slowly becomes invisible. Not because his love isn't real, not because his devotion isn't pure, but because his emotional rhythm becomes too familiar, too expected. And in that predictability, something vital begins to die. Curiosity. And when curiosity dies, desire soon follows. What many men mistake for loyalty is often just a habit of seeking approval. They confuse showing up unconditionally with proving their worth. They believe that being constantly present, always emotionally accessible, and unwaveringly responsive will deepen connection. But in reality, what it often does is flatten the emotional landscape. It removes tension, it removes polarity, and most dangerously, it removes mystery. Predictability is not a sign of emotional security. It's often a symptom of emotional dependency. When she always knows how you'll respond, when your emotions are on a leash tied to her every move, she stops feeling the need to pay attention. Because what's always there rarely gets seen. What's always available slowly becomes background noise. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become inconsistent just to play games. But it does mean you must learn to hold your presence in a more intentional way. You must stop offering yourself on demand, like something to be consumed whenever she needs emotional reassurance. That is not love. That's performance. And deep down, you know it's exhausting. There is power in being a little bit unpredictable, not in a manipulative sense, but in the way a man who is growing always is. Because when you are truly evolving, you are naturally more difficult to predict. You're reading new things, trying new routines, meeting new people. Your patterns shift because you are shifting. You don't pull away to get a reaction. You pull into yourself to reconnect with your direction. And that, without even trying, creates mystery. Mystery is what makes her pause. It's what keeps her checking her phone, wondering what you're thinking, how you're doing, and why you suddenly feel different even though you haven't said a word. It's not that you're avoiding her. It's that you're no longer orbiting her. You're no longer texting just because it's been a few hours. You're no longer apologizing just to restore peace. You're no longer showing up without being invited, because now you're showing up for yourself first. The masculine presence is most powerful when it is rooted in direction. When your life is rich with purpose, structure, and drive, you become a force that cannot be contained or predicted. And that presence, moving, breathing, expanding, is intoxicating because she knows you care. She knows you're capable of love. But now she also knows she can't control it, and that uncertainty awakens her senses. So how do you shift this dynamic? You stop being the man she always expects and start being the man who is always becoming. You change your patterns, not to confuse her, but to evolve you. You stop responding instantly to every message and start responding when you are actually present. You take space, not as punishment, but as protection for your time, your energy, your peace. You create moments of silence, not as manipulation, but as sacred distance that allows her to feel the absence of your presence and wonder about the fullness of your life. You let her miss you, not because you disappeared, but because you became full enough without her that your presence now carries weight again. Desire isn't born from logic. It's born from emotion, from tension, from moments of unpredictability that make her feel something she can't fully name. When you become predictable, she no longer wonders, and when she stops wondering, she stops reaching, she stops investing. Because emotionally, she already knows where you are and how you'll respond. There's no journey, there's no edge, there's no reason to lean forward. So let her lean, let her wonder, let her question where your thoughts are, what your next move will be, and what's shifted inside of you. Not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown. Full stop. Predictability is the death of mystery, and mystery is the heartbeat of desire. That doesn't mean being inconsistent or withholding love. It means becoming a man whose life is too rich, too purposeful, too alive to fall into anyone's emotional routine. When she senses that your presence is earned, not assumed, she will feel something she hasn't in a while: respect. And respect, when laced with a little uncertainty, becomes irresistible. So don't chase, don't perform, don't prove. Be rooted, be evolving, be a little hard to read, not because you're hiding, but because you're building. Let her miss the man who was always there by becoming the man who is finally becoming more. Let your presence feel different, not through silence, but through strength. And let that mystery speak louder than any text ever could. 6. Emotional reactions. only reveal your dependency. There's a moment right after she walks away or pulls back where your chest feels hollow and your hands tremble with the weight of everything unsaid. That aching impulse, the need to text her, to plead for clarity, to fight for connection, is overwhelming. But here's the hard truth. Those emotional outbursts don't express love. They reveal dependency. They don't say, "I care." They scream, "I can't stand without you." You think sending that late-night message, explaining everything you're feeling, will bring her closer. But all it does is confirm that she holds power over your emotional world. And when a woman realizes she has that kind of control, something shifts. She no longer sees you as the grounded, composed man she once admired. She sees someone unraveling, someone who's tethered to her validation to feel whole. And that realization doesn't draw her in, it pushes her further away. What she truly needs to see, what leaves a lasting impression, is a man who can feel pain without performing it. A man who can bleed silently without making it a spectacle. A man who still shows up to his own life even while carrying heartbreak on his back. That level of self-control isn't cold. It's rare. It's the kind of quiet resilience that makes her stop and reconsider everything she thought she knew about you. You're not emotionless, but you've learned to sit with your feelings without letting them dictate your behavior. That is real strength. When you feel the urge to reach out, when your heart begs for contact, you don't explode, you evolve. You turn that emotional storm inward and use it as fuel. You work out, you read, you build, you connect with people who remind you of your value, not to escape the pain, but to honor it without becoming it. This is how you reclaim your power. You replace reaction with ritual. You show yourself that you are not a slave to impulse. You prove that you can be in pain and still be in control. That balance between vulnerability and discipline, that's what separates a man who is attractive from one who is merely available. So when the silence gets loud and your emotions start to rise, don't reach for her. Reach deeper into yourself. The world doesn't need another man who panics. It needs more men who know how to feel without falling apart. Let her see that. Let her feel that. And let that be the reason she looks at you differently, not because you begged, but because you didn't have to. 7. Don't change to win her back. Change to never lose yourself again. There's a dangerous illusion that many men fall into after a woman walks away. The idea that if you just become better, stronger, more successful, she'll come back. You hit the gym harder, make more money, post more polished photos, not to evolve, but to prove something. And while transformation is always powerful, when it's fueled by the desire to be seen by her again, it's not real growth. It's just performance with a fragile heartbeat. If everything you do is still tied to the hope that she'll regret leaving, then she still owns you. You're not becoming free. You're simply reshaping yourself into a version you hope she might want. But that path always leads to disappointment, because no matter how impressive you become, the need for her validation will haunt every achievement. It will stain every success with the quiet echo of, was this enough to get her back? And that question keeps you trapped. Real growth begins the moment you stop trying to prove and start trying to reclaim. Not her, but you. Your identity, your worth, your direction. The moment your progress is no longer about getting a reaction and instead becomes about honoring who you truly are and who you're meant to be, everything changes. You're no longer chasing closure or seeking recognition. You're rising, not out of pain, but out of purpose. She walked away from a version of you that no longer exists. Let that version go. He tried. He cared. Maybe he gave too much. Maybe he forgot how to hold himself. But he doesn't need to come back, because now something new is being built. A man who doesn't need someone else's presence to believe in his own. A man who can stand alone and still stand tall. And yes, one day she may see it. She may look back and realize that the man she walked away from has become the kind of man she can no longer reach. Not because he hates her, not because he's trying to hurt her, but because he's simply moved so far forward that there's no looking back. That is when the regret sets in, not when she sees you trying to win her back, but when she sees that you never needed her to win yourself. So define a vision for your life that doesn't include her, not out of spite, not to erase her, but to reclaim your sovereignty, because you were never meant to build your world around someone else's affection. You were meant to build it from the inside out, with truth, with fire, with direction. This isn't about revenge, it's about release. It's about becoming so deeply aligned with your values, your mission, your future, that even if she stood in front of you again and said she wanted another chance, you'd have to stop and ask yourself if she fits into the man you've now become. And that pause, that clarity, that's freedom. You are no longer the man who waits for permission to grow. You are the man who grows without needing to be seen. And that kind of transformation doesn't chase validation. It commands respect, not just from her, but from you. So don't change to make her regret losing you. Change because you refuse to lose yourself again. Let the man you're becoming be the loudest answer to the question she never asked. What if he didn't need me after all? Summary. No contact on its own is never the answer. Not when it's rooted in desperation, not when it's used as a tactic, not when your silence is just a mask for unresolved pain. Disappearing doesn't make you powerful, becoming does. Because silence without substance is just absence, but silence that emerges from purpose, from transformation, from self-respect, that carries weight. You don't need to explain your silence when it's built on direction. When your life speaks for itself, through your consistency, through your discipline, through the quiet power of your presence, your absence becomes undeniable. You're no longer the man who waits for a response or seeks to be seen. You are the man who moves forward regardless, whose path is lit from within, not by the flicker of her attention. She won't crumble because you stopped calling. She won't fall apart because you disappeared. What breaks her expectations, what makes her question everything, is seeing the man you've become while she was gone. Not bitter, not cold, just better, clearer, stronger. She left believing she knew you. But the version she knew has evolved into someone unshakable, someone she can no longer reach the way she once did. This is the paradox. You don't rise to hurt her, you rise to reclaim yourself, and in doing so, you shift the entire story. Because the man who no longer needs to explain his silence is the man who finally understands his worth, and that truth echoes louder than any words ever could. You don't need to disappear to prove your worth. You only need to begin showing up for yourself, with consistency, with quiet conviction, until she realizes something painful and profound. She never truly saw your value until you stopped handing it over so freely. The man who begs is forgotten. The man who rises is remembered. She doesn't miss the one who pleaded for another chance. She misses the one who became unforgettable, not because he vanished, but because he no longer needed to be chosen to know his own worth. That kind of man is not born out of pretending to be okay. He is built in the silence of self-respect, in the decision to become more than what heartbreak tried to reduce him to. So don't go no contact hoping she'll return. Go no contact with the beliefs that told you you weren't enough. Let who you become speak for you. Subscribe to Stoic Station for more on masculine power, emotional control, and self-mastery. Your transformation starts now.